But okay, I'm going to get started on the Furry book review panel. All right. Bye. It was nice. It was nice seeing you, Izzy. Okay, so Furry book review. And thank you all for coming. If you're leaving for the anthologies, thank you so much for staying and all. So Furry book review. So for this one, I'm kind of going to talk about the history of Furry book review, how it originated. I'm going to talk about our current reviewers, the review process, how to get your book reviewed, how to be a reviewer. I'll talk about the Leos, and I'll open it up for questions. So to start, FBR stands for Furry Book Review. And I remember before I started it, I had issues because I saw that there were a few outlets where there were book reviews posted. Dogpatch Press would post occasional reviews, specifically from Fred Patton, if I remember correctly. Adjective Species occasionally posted book reviews. There's another one that was really odd. I can't remember what it was called, like Furry Times or something, that even I was a part of until the moderator for that got really cringy. Yeah, there really wasn't. Yeah, and there's Flavor too. That's right, there is Flavor, and they've occasionally posted reviews, and they still do occasionally, I think. But I found there to be just so many issues with the way reviews were happening. So typically, to my knowledge, only like the top major books were getting reviewed. If they were by one of the top 2 furry presses, they'd get reviewed. Otherwise, they wouldn't get touched. There wasn't much of a connection between the publishers and the places reviewing. So that meant there wasn't any kind of outreach really actively happening. And I was thinking to myself, at the time at least, one of my favorite things to sit in on was when the Furry Writers Guild, back on Anthroaquatic forums or whatever, like people would talk about a review that had been posted about an anthology, and people loved talking about what was said about their story. But it's like only certain anthologies ever got that treatment. So I really wanted there to be a better review program in existence, one that was centered on the publishers and was more of an active part in the Furry Writers Guild as well. So I said, fuck it, I'll make my own. And I did, Furry Book Review. And I had a lot of principles in mind when I started the program. I wanted there to be several people besides me. I didn't want this to be Howl's Book Corner. That's not what I was interested in. And even to this day, I rarely post reviews. It's mostly the rest of the team. I wanted there to be at least a proofreading process on the reviews. I wanted there to be a selection process. I'd say out of the people who express interest in reviewing for us, I probably take maybe 20-30% of them. Because a lot of people just don't have review experience, or when they write a sample review, it's literally just a summary. Or they go too far, and they're just interested in saying, this writer needs to quit being a writer altogether. So it's about finding that line between giving a hook for potential readers of that review, alongside potential critical analysis, so that people really know what that author's strengths are and weaknesses are, as well as encouraging the author for what their strengths are, what they can improve on. So I had a lot of goals in mind with the Furry Book Review. I wanted it to be this, and I also reached out to all the furry publishers. I was like, look, y'all, we need to make this happen. Can I told furry publishers, I was like, can I possibly request frequent ebooks, e-copies, to distribute to reviewers in exchange for reviews? And unanimously, they all said yes. They all said yes. They were hands down ready to do this. And to this day, we get reviews from all the publishing houses pretty much, or ebooks from each of the publishing houses, and I get those sent out to our reviewers. We have like 5 or 6 active reviewers right now, which is very minimal. I think we have a backlist of like 25, 30 books to be reviewed right now. Mostly coming out of Thurston and Howell, actually Weasel Press right now, and Fur Planet, just because of the sheer number of books that those houses put out in a year. So they definitely make up the dominant percentage of that list. But that's just because of the number of books that all those houses are turning out. So yeah, it's been a process, and I'm still always recruiting more reviewers. On the lookout for them. And the review process, I give consideration to a reviewer's interests. So some might say, I don't want any erotica. And some say, I only want erotica. Some say, I only want horror. Stuff like that. And I try to take those thoughts into consideration when I'm giving people books to review. And then I usually give them about a month, regardless of length. Well, I make exception if it's a really, really, really long book. Like I think last year or 2 years ago, we had Adam Brown's Imperium Lupi, which was just this fucking massive beast of a book. It's more like 3 big books combined into one. It's so big. That was a beast of a book, pun intended. So I definitely gave like 2 months for that one because that was just hell. Good book, but very big book. So yeah, there's that selection process, and they have time to review it, and then they get it to me, and I tell them, hey, make sure you try to post this on Amazon and or Goodreads as well, so that it can get that traction there. And I at least proofread the review for grammar and spelling mistakes, and if there's other issues, I do tell the reviewer that. And usually those larger issues are things like, hey, you really just summarized here. Can you try to be a little more critical here? Not, you don't have to rip this author a new one or anything, but try to actually engage with the writing style and stuff like that, And I think it was about a year into the program that I also decided I wanted to start an award program out of the Furry Book Review, and that's called the Leo Literary Award. Now, the Leos is something I'm really proud about. I talked with a lot of people when I was creating these awards. I specifically leaned on a lot of Kyle's words because he had a few blog posts about the Furry Literary Awards and some of the issues that he had found within those. And I agreed with all those 100%. I might be summarizing or making up my own points here entirely, but some of the issues, at least I had with the awards, because I'm not going to speak for Kyle, of course, but he does have those blog posts if anyone's interested. Some of the issues we had were that some of the awards were more of a social media-based popularity contest. And a lot of them didn't require the books to actually even be read. And there wasn't really much of a objective standard of like looking at furry literature in terms of literature. It's like looking at it from an outside furry perspective as well. So there were all these elements that like we found, definitely I found problematic in some of the extant furry awards. So with the Leos, I set about trying to make something unique and something that tried, at least, to address some of those concerns. So, yeah, as Fuzz says, Kyle did definitely voluntarily withdraw his works from future consideration with the Ursas a long time ago. Oh yeah, he's had that stance for like, I'd say about 10 years. It's been a while. But yeah, it was with the Leos, I said, okay, we're gonna have a panel of judges who have to read every single fucking book, every story, everything that's nominated. This panel of judges have to read entirely. And the judges are, I try to change them out every year as much as I can, but I try to keep it a diverse panel. It's usually at least 5 people, and it's made up of both furries and non-furries, all of whom have writing credits or review credits to their name. And they all have these score sheets to analyze each type of work. So, like anthologies, they have to judge it for not only the quality of the stories, but also the cohesion of the anthology. For short stories, they have to think about things like uh, the style of the work, the quality of it, how evocative it is, things like that. And the way these score sheets work is the combination of a single work's score sheets. Um, if they pass a benchmark, I think the benchmark is like 60%. If they get over 60% of the vote, then they get a Leo. And what that means is for any category, let's say novels, there's not just one winner, there are multiple recipients. If they pass that bar that's decided on by that panel of judges, then they receive the award, regardless of if they were the hands down best book of 2020. It's like, no, they together make up quality literature. I see in the chat the question, why include non-furries? So the idea behind that is we don't want furry to exist in a vacuum. We don't want furry literature to be its own thing that ignores all other literature. While I'm not going to go so far as to say there are complete objective standards to what defines good literature, I think it's important to have outsiders look at it as well. Not in terms of like how furry something is. That's not what the scores even focus on. They focus on general literary qualities. And we wanted to see that happening from outside the fandom, people who might not have the same biases that a lot of because I mean, I'm one to talk. It's like furries are very, very incestuous when it comes to publishing, writing, editing. And that's not necessarily the worst thing ever. I don't think we should get rid of our connections and our relationships by a long shot. But I think it's nice to have those kind of outside perspectives when we're trying to do this kind of award, for sure, or that kind of a critical analysis of judgment. So for me, it wasn't just the idea of diversity, as Doma says. It's also this idea of more of a fairness idea, I think. So the Leos, I think we've done it 2 years now. I think we're coming up on our third, I guess. And that, as Dr. Isaac says, exposure to the outside world is useful in helping encouraging things to be fresh. Yes, on multiple levels. Absolutely. And the Leos have been received really well ever since its creation. People have loved it. And it's been a really enjoyable experience for me, too, having people say, wow, I got this award, and it means something because even people I don't even know their names read this book entirely and voted with scores and liked it. And that means something to a lot of these writers. And especially when, I mean, bringing up what you all said in the chat, like, especially when you're up against Kyle Gold, you know, like, for some awards, it's like, even me being nominated, I felt like there's no point in even having hope. You know, that was a thought I had, and I can't imagine I was the only one who had that thought ever. So it's like, it's nice to know that there's this award where you really don't have to be pitted against others. You're pitted against a bar instead. Domus asks, are there criteria for what can be submitted for Leo besides it being furry? Yeah, we have guidelines on the website. And I guess it behooved me to post that to the chat as well. wixsite.com/blog. I believe that's right. I think so. So it's on that website what the criteria are for being submitted for Leo. So there's a nomination process. Only certain people can nominate. You can't self-nominate. And a person can only nominate one work per category. Sorry. And then the requirements for who can be on the panel are just a little bit more stringent than that. Just a little bit more. It's kind of like the requirements that apply for nominators is like just a little bit more recent. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but if nominators were like, you've been published in the past 4 years, um, judges would have to be in the past 2 years, as an example. That's not the exact number, I don't think. But other than that, it has to be a furry work. It has to be something that's marketed within the furry community. So it's separate, because I know like Ursa Major Awards will say Zootopia is up for the win. But we really try to focus on the specific furry community. So we're not. So I'm not. Now, granted, I'm not interested in saying Zootopia is not furry or anything like that. But at least for the purpose of this award, it's a community award, and I wanted to keep that in mind. And I think it has to have been published within a certain timeline, a year essentially. I think that's pretty much it. I think that's the only real requirements for a book to be eligible. Yeah. What other questions do you folks have for me? Okay, no rush. No rush, Otter. It's so bizarre because I see the chat live and the chat is very up to date, but the video lags. It's like even as I'm sitting here just being quiet watching the chat, my video feed is still talking from like 5 minutes ago. All right, so you ask, what sort of work are you looking for in terms from reviewers? I used to write some reviews for Dog Patch, but that kind of fell by the wayside. So the requirements for review, I don't have super stringent requirements on the reviewers so much as I'd like to see a sample review from you to be able to judge if you can do it. Other than that, I like to know that you can actually read a book in a month's time. And especially you should have access to be able to read ebooks in whatever format we get them. Also, you're looking for reviews that are meant to be aimed at the writer or reviews aimed at potential consumers. Generally, we prefer the latter. That said, I definitely, because we are such a close-knit community, I try to encourage reviewers to be mindful of that. So, like, don't rip authors a new one because that reputation kind of matters in this community. And you don't want to knock down voices that are just beginning to write. So you definitely want to keep in mind the fact that a writer might read the review and probably will read the review. But generally, they should be aimed at the potential consumers because we're trying to get people to get the book. All right, any other questions? Sorry, I was getting weird notifications about stuff on for a book review, actually. I was like, is that someone asking questions on Twitter? Now, granted, you can ask irrelevant questions somewhere, Otter, if you want. Dr. Isaacs asks, do you actively look for reviewers or have them come to you at this point? Yeah, yes to both. Maybe once a month I try to post on the Furry Book Review Twitter account saying, hey, we're looking for reviewers. And I encourage people to shoot me a message if they're interested. So if you're interested yourself, by all means, hit me up and I will gladly see what your reviews look like and go from there. Absolutely. Some writer asks this very potent and irrelevant question: if something doesn't have elephants, does that make it irrelevant? I'm going to say yes. As a general rule of thumb, I'm going to say yes. The Nightbot apparently does not like Summer Otter for whatever reason. Weird. Yeah, I get you, Dr. Isaacs. Yeah, it's late in the day. It's been a long con day. Domus asks what requirements are needed in an email when you're nominating something for the Leos this year. Uh, in general, just like, I mean, I personally know your writing history a little bit, so I know you are actually eligible to nominate. Um, but in general, especially if I don't know you or I'm not familiar with your work, you need to tell me what your publication history is over the past couple of years, for sure. Summer, do you look for only new reviews, or would older stuff be okay? I get this question a lot. Um, I really, really, really want to prioritize newer content because we have that backlist I was talking about. I really don't see the point of getting new reviewers if that's not helping the backlist at all. Um, Especially because I'm sure that would frustrate some of the publishers to see that a book like 10 years old is getting reviewed, but not this thing they've been waiting for us to review for like 8 months. Yeah, if it's older than 10 years, that's really really old. Well, I'm glad you like the sci-fis. I try. The reviews are generally positive, and I think having a mix of furries and non-furries doing the reviews is a positive thing. Good, I'm glad. Um, I mean, I am not going to be one to toot my own horn much, but I will say it is a lot of work doing it. So I'm glad that it's at least getting noticed. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll give you a poke summer otter. Let me make a note of that so that I don't forget either, because I can do that. Thanks, Warren Dog. Much appreciated. Someone's asking what time it is. It is 11:56 p.m. my time. Wonder if this person's a bot. I'm not sure. In general terms, what do you have currently in backlog? Genres, demographies, etc. Um, so right now we have a lot of anthologies. We have a fair bit of erotica. I think we have like 3 or 4 indie stuff, which is always hard to gauge what to expect with that, just in my experience anyway. Um, I think we mostly have anthologies right now, and it's mostly erotic stuff. Um, Fuzz said, I think we needed a central place for reviews. The problem with what we had before was several separate sites posting reviews in among news. Yeah, a lot of those sites were news sites, so it was tough to really get that going. Looking at Domus's comment, I'm glad it's refreshing, and I'm glad you're seeing that chance for exposure. Yeah. And yeah, we're just talking about the what's called the Furry Book Review Program, and its associated awards as well. Well, I think we're about out of time. So I do want to say thank you all so much for bearing with me and hearing me rant about the things I do. Um, but thank you so much. And if you ever have any questions for me, just hit me up at Telegram at Thurston Howell. And always appreciated. Thank you all so much.